She destroyed my dignity for a laugh at dinner. Then I waited 3 weeks and, at 43, I thought I understood the boundaries of marriage. After 8 years with Catherine, I believed we had built something unshakable on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. She was brilliant, sharp-witted, and had this magnetic energy that could light up any room. Most of the time, I cherished her for exactly who she was. But looking back now, I realize I had been slowly dying inside, one cutting remark at a time, without even knowing it. It started as playfully as morning coffee. Little observations about how I'd forgotten to replace the toilet paper, gentle teasing about my expanding waistline, laughter shared with her girlfriends when I stumbled over our golden retriever Max in our suburban kitchen. Harmless married couple banter, right? The kind of thing you see in sitcoms where everyone laughs and moves on. I convinced myself it was just Catherine's way of showing affection, her unique brand of humor that had drawn me to her in the first place. But 3 decades of life experience had taught me to recognize patterns, and over the past several months, something fundamental had shifted. Her jokes began crossing invisible lines, landing in places that felt less like playful affection and more like calculated humiliation. The laughter that once felt warm now carried an edge that made my chest tighten and my jaw clench involuntarily. That particular evening in late October, we found ourselves at Marcus and Diana's dinner party in their cozy ranch-style home, just 2 neighborhoods over from ours. The scene was perfectly ordinary, maybe 10 of us gathered around their dining room table, the kind with the slight wobble that makes you careful with your wine glass. The aroma of Diana's famous pot roast filled the air, mixed with the vanilla candles she always lit for company. We were all sharing stories, laughing over a charcuterie board that Marcus had probably spent 2 hours arranging, sipping that mid-range Cabernet that couples our age buy at Costco. Someone had cracked a joke about disastrous first dates, and Catherine's friend Jennifer asked what her most embarrassing dating experience had ever been. Without missing a single beat, Catherine leaned back in her chair, that familiar mischievous smile spreading across her face, and said, "Oh, definitely the guy who talked nonstop about his model train collection for 3 solid hours. Will him and Michael here tie for the most boring first date award?" The table erupted in laughter, and I forced my facial muscles into what I hoped looked like good-natured amusement. But inside, something cold and heavy settled in my stomach like a stone dropped into still water. The familiar tightness crept up my throat, that sensation you get when you're trying not to cry or scream or simply disappear from existence entirely. Then came the moment that would haunt me for weeks, the words that would replay in my mind like a broken record player stuck on the most painful note. The conversation had somehow meandered toward relationships and intimacy, the way these things do when wine loosens tongues and people forget there are boundaries that shouldn't be crossed in polite company. Catherine, already several glasses into the evening and clearly feeling bold, leaned back against her chair, tilted her head with that expression I once found endearing, and delivered the line that would change everything between us. "Well," she said, her voice carrying that casual confidence that comes from someone who believes they're about to deliver the funniest punchline of the evening, "at least my ex-boyfriend Derek was significantly more impressive in the bedroom department." The words hung in the air like smoke from an extinguished candle. The entire table went dead silent for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 2 or 3 seconds. Then came that awful, scattered laughter, the kind where people don't know if they should be amused, horrified, or if they should suddenly remember they need to check on their babysitter and leave immediately. My ears started ringing as if someone had fired a gunshot next to my head. My chest felt like it was being compressed in a vice, each breath requiring conscious effort. The voices around me became muffled, distant, like I was hearing them from underwater. I didn't say a word. I didn't storm out dramatically or pound my fist on the table or demand an apology. I just sat there, maintaining that same forced smile, nodding slightly as if she'd just commented on the weather, pretending with every fiber of my being that her words hadn't just torn something fundamental inside me completely apart. But inside, in the deepest parts of my soul, something didn't just crack. It shattered into 1,000 irreparable pieces. The drive home felt like traveling through a fog of betrayal so thick I could barely see the road ahead. Catherine attempted to play it off, calling me too sensitive with that dismissive laugh she used when she wanted to minimize something she'd done. She reached over to squeeze my hand at a red light, probably expecting me to squeeze back and let her know everything was forgiven, that we could go home and pretend it had never happened. I didn't respond, not because I was giving her the silent treatment, but because I was already 3 steps ahead, my mind working with a clarity I hadn't experienced in months. I wasn't angry yet. Anger would come later. Right now, I was planning. I spent that entire night staring at the ceiling of our bedroom, listening to Catherine's peaceful breathing beside me as if nothing earth-shattering had occurred just hours before. My mind replayed her words over and over, dissecting not just what she'd said, but how she'd said it. That smug, almost proud expression on her face when she delivered the punchline. The way she'd looked around the table afterward, basking in the shocked laughter like a comedian who just nailed their best bit. At least my ex-boyfriend Derek was significantly more impressive in the bedroom department. It wasn't just the public humiliation, though that was devastating enough. It wasn't even the intimate details she'd chosen to share with people who would never look at me the same way again. It was the realization that the woman I'd spent 8 years building a life with thought so little of my dignity that she was willing to sacrifice it for a cheap laugh. The woman who was supposed to be my partner, my teammate, my safe harbor in life's storms, had decided that embarrassing me in front of our social circle was acceptable collateral damage for a moment of attention. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I didn't bring up what had happened at dinner. Not because I had forgiven her, not because I was ready to move on, but because I wanted her to believe I had. I kissed her forehead tenderly before leaving for work, made her coffee exactly the way she liked it with 2 sugars and a splash of vanilla creamer, even texted her during my lunch break asking how her day was progressing at the elementary school where she taught 4th grade. If she noticed anything different about my behavior, she didn't show it. But when I was alone, driving to work, sitting at my desk during breaks, standing in the shower, I was crafting exactly what I would say. Not an explosive outburst, not a screaming match that would end with slammed doors and threats of divorce. No, I wanted something far more surgical, more precise. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her own words, to understand that respect isn't negotiable in a marriage, that some lines, once crossed, fundamentally alter the landscape of a relationship. 3 weeks later, fate handed me the perfect opportunity. We were hosting a backyard barbecue at our own home, our modest 2-story colonial with the blue shutters and the garden Catherine was always proud to show off. I spent the entire day preparing, grilling chicken and burgers on our reliable old Weber, arranging folding chairs around our patio table, keeping the cooler stocked with beer and the kind of boxed wine that tastes better than it should. Catherine was absolutely in her element, fluttering from group to group, her laughter ringing out across our backyard, playing the perfect hostess role she'd mastered over our years together. The same crowd was there, Marcus and Diana, Jennifer and her husband Paul, a few other couples from our neighborhood, and Catherine's teaching colleagues. The evening had that comfortable rhythm of established friendships, people who'd shared enough meals and conversations to have inside jokes and familiar stories. At one point, Jennifer asked us how we managed to keep our marriage so strong after 8 years, especially when so many couples they knew were struggling or getting divorced. Catherine's face lit up with that familiar expression, her mouth already opening to deliver what I knew would be another witty observation at my expense, probably about my habits or my appearance or some embarrassing thing I'd done recently. But this time, I was ready. "You know what keeps our marriage strong?" I said, my voice calm and conversational, cutting her off as gently as if I were simply adding to her thought rather than redirecting the entire conversation. Mutual respect. At least, that's what I thought we had. The easy chatter around our patio began to fade as people sensed a shift in the atmosphere. Catherine blinked, clearly thrown off by my unexpected interruption. "Michael," she started, probably planning to steer us back into safer, funnier territory. But I didn't let her finish. I looked straight at her, maintaining the same gentle tone I might use to discuss weekend plans or what to have for dinner. "You know, 3 weeks ago you made a joke about your ex-boyfriend Derek being more impressive than me in bed. I've been thinking about that comment quite a lot lately." Her face went pale so quickly I thought she might faint. The confident smile that had been playing at the corners of her mouth completely vanished, replaced by something that looked like growing panic. Around us, conversations died mid-sentence. Someone set down their beer bottle a little too carefully. The only sounds were the distant hum of our neighbor's air conditioner and a dog barking somewhere down the street. "Michael," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't mean—" "You're absolutely right," I interrupted, my voice still conversational, still calm. "Derek was more impressive. More impressive at lying to you for 2 years about seeing other women. More impressive at draining your bank account to pay for his gambling addiction. More impressive at treating you like you were disposable, like your feelings and your dignity meant absolutely nothing to him." I paused, letting those words settle over our gathered friends like dust after an explosion. Catherine's eyes were wide now, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for her wine glass and then thought better of it. "And yet," I continued, "here you are with me, the man who held you every night for months after Derek broke your heart so completely you couldn't get out of bed. The man who helped you rebuild your credit score and your self-worth. The man who married you not despite your past, but because I wanted to give you a future worth having." The silence around our patio was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. Catherine's mouth opened and closed like she was trying to form words that wouldn't come. Tears were starting to well up in her eyes, but I wasn't finished. "You stood in front of people who respect us both," I said, my voice growing quieter rather than louder, which somehow made every word carry more weight. "And you turned our marriage, our intimacy, our most private moments into a punchline for strangers to laugh at. I smiled and laughed along that night because I love you, but I haven't been able to look at you the same way since." "Michael, please," she whispered, reaching for my hand across the table. I didn't pull away, but I didn't take her hand either. "Do you know why, Catherine?" She shook her head, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "Because the woman I married, the woman I've built 8 years of my life around, would never deliberately humiliate the person she's supposed to love most in this world. She would never trade her husband's dignity for a moment of attention from people whose opinions shouldn't matter more than her marriage." The weight of what I was saying seemed to hit everyone at once. Our friends sat frozen, unsure whether they should leave or stay, whether they were witnessing a marriage falling apart or somehow being rebuilt in real time. "You know what I've decided?" I asked, my voice still maddeningly calm. Catherine's breathing had become shallow, panicked. She couldn't speak, could only wait for me to continue. "I'm done laughing it off. I'm done pretending that disrespect disguised as humor is acceptable in our marriage. I'm done being the punchline in my own life story." I leaned forward slightly, making sure she could see directly into my eyes. "If you want to be with someone you can publicly compare to other men, someone whose feelings are expendable for your entertainment, then maybe you should go find Derek. Because I would rather spend the rest of my life alone than spend another day with someone who thinks my humiliation is amusing." The sound of Catherine's sob broke the silence like glass shattering. She buried her face in her hands, her whole body shaking with the force of her crying. Around us, our friends looked like they were witnessing a car accident, horrified but unable to look away. "Michael," she managed to say through her tears, "I'm so sorry. I was trying to be funny. I didn't think." "That's exactly the problem," I said, my voice finally showing a hint of the pain I'd been carrying for weeks. "You didn't think? You didn't think about what those words would do to me. You didn't think about how it would feel to have the person I trust most in the world make me the subject of a joke about my worth as a man, as a husband, as a human being." I stood up from the table, my legs steadier than I'd expected them to be. "And if this marriage is going to survive, if there's going to be any hope for us moving forward, that thoughtlessness has to change. Right here, right now, in front of everyone who heard you tear me down." Catherine looked up at me, mascara streaking down her face, her usual composure completely shattered. "I promise," she whispered, her voice breaking on each word. "Michael, I swear to you, I will never, ever do anything like that again. Please don't leave me, please." For a moment, I let the silence stretch between us, let her feel the uncertainty of not knowing whether she'd just destroyed everything we'd built together. Then I reached down and gently touched her shoulder, breaking the tension just enough for everyone around us to remember how to breathe. "I love you, Catherine," I said quietly, "but love without respect is just a beautiful way to destroy each other slowly." I turned to our guests, most of whom were staring at their hands or their drinks, and managed what I hoped was a gracious smile. "I apologize for making everyone uncomfortable. This probably wasn't the dinner conversation you were expecting. Who wants dessert?" Catherine made her famous apple pie this morning. The evening continued, but everything had changed. The conversations were more careful, more thoughtful. Catherine didn't make a single joke at anyone's expense, let alone mine. She stayed close to me for the rest of the night, not in a clingy way, but like someone who had just realized they'd been standing at the edge of a cliff without knowing it. After our friends left and we'd cleaned up the dishes and folded away the chairs, Catherine and I sat on our back porch in the kind of silence that can either destroy a marriage or save it. Finally, she spoke. "I never realized," she said, her voice hoarse from crying. "I honestly never realized how much I'd been hurting you. I thought. I thought it was just how we joked around. I thought you knew I didn't mean anything by it." I looked at her, this woman I'd spent 8 years of my life loving, and saw something I hadn't seen in months, genuine remorse mixed with a new understanding of who I actually was beneath all her assumptions. "The scary part," I said, "is that I was starting to believe it too. Starting to believe that being the target of your humor was just the price I paid for being married to someone more clever, more socially confident than me. I was losing myself one laugh at a time, and I didn't even realize it was happening." She reached for my hand, and this time I let her take it. "What do we do now?" she asked. "Now we figure out how to be married to each other instead of to the people we thought we were," I said. "Now we learn the difference between loving someone and respecting them, and why you can't really have one without the other." It's been 6 months since that night, and I can honestly say that our marriage is stronger now than it's been in years. Not because we never disagree or because Catherine never makes jokes, but because she learned to see me as a person whose feelings matter as much as her need for laughter. And I learned that self-respect isn't something you can afford to sacrifice, even for love, especially for love. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to let them treat you badly. Sometimes saving a marriage means being willing to risk losing it. And sometimes the person you're really fighting for isn't your partner. It's the version of yourself you're in danger of forgetting you used to be. That night, I didn't just get my wife back. I got myself back too. And that, more than any apology or promise, is what made our marriage worth saving.